Blog Talk Radio. Hello and welcome to Awakenings, part of the Converging Flow. I'm your host and co-pilot, Michele Meiche. Welcome to everyone that's joining us in the chat room right now and all of you that will be listening later via iTunes and the other archives. It's great to connect with all of you, and I do hope that this Wednesday is in a wonderful flow for you. Awakenings Radio, here we host interviews and dialogues with spiritual teachers, authors, artists, musicians, visionaries, and experts of all types that are living awake or are awakening and taking this awakened state into their everyday lives. We're a bridging point for art, spirituality, and creativity. At Awakenings, we focus on a timely relaying of essential information, insights, and tools for transformation and spiritual unfoldment. And if you have questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your voice. We love you in the chat as well, but if you are feeling drawn to speak, that would be wonderful. And that number is 347-539-5122. Again, that's 347-539-5122. And comment or share what you've been going through on your path, and or comment for the guests or myself. And if you also are a guest and you're new to Awakenings and you would like to participate in the chat, all you have to do is register just using your name and email address, and that gets you participation in that. Now, you can also listen via chat, but if you want to respond, that's another thing. And I love that too, because I got the email happening, the texting, chat room, and then people calling in, or as well as listening by phone. So it makes it very interactive. Also, just to kind of get a little out of the way here, if you also want to keep in touch with Awakenings and know what's going on, you can email us at awakenings@selfandlight.com. And our Facebook page is Awakenings Radio. So that, some ways for you guys to stay connected, and which I love. We've got some great interaction on the Awakenings Radio on Facebook. So it's nice to connect with everyone and see what everyone is up to and doing. And again, that call-in number 347-539-5122. Let us know how you're doing. How's your 2010 doing? 2010, time of renewal, clarification, I would say divine discontent a little bit. You might feel a little discontent and like you want to do something more with your life or what you have going on. And this is the beginning. You know, there is a new beginning. We're coming out of a major completion time. So it really is about honoring what's completing. And sometimes completing is doing something differently. It may be doing the same thing but doing it differently or a different approach, or sometimes it is phasing something out in your life, be it a habit, a focus, a goal, be it a way of being or relating, being at where you're living or what your work purpose, what you're doing for your career. So tune in and watch those signposts. You know, I was on the radio this morning. I was interviewed on Inside Out at Unity FM, and I had a chat about that, a dialogue about that, and was asked the question about meditation and being in that meditative state, and how that can help people on their path. And I was sharing that what I find that it's not so much that people aren't getting the signs, aren't getting the help, aren't getting the messages. It's misinterpretation of the signs and the messages. And when we're not emotionally clear or balanced, and our little ego, the constructed ego, is in the way or is kind of taking over, when our concerns are very egoic, it's hard to read the signs or interpret them in a way that is really life-enhancing, that supports the greater vision of us, and that also supports that which is more life-enhancing. So it's getting in that meditative state, getting in that centered state on a regular basis can really help to know, well, what am I to do? Do I do this now? What I want to do? Do I do it now? Do I wait? Do I plan? Which direction is coming in for me? All those little questions and big questions can be answered by that higher, more expanded consciousness, the higher mind, the place of innovation, the place of creativity. And that puts us into a form of conscious creation, being conscious creators. That's where we're going to, is more consciousness, so that our ego personality, the personality, gets to be the vessel or the vehicle, gets to be the extension, not the extender. So, one of my spiritual teachers used to say that, the ego is your amigo, it's fine, but it needs to be the caboose and not the engine. And that's true. A healthy sense of self, ego personality, that which makes us unique or individual, is great, but if that's not in check or that isn't connected spiritually, can sometimes have us go in a different direction, or misinterpret our direction is another way to look at that as well. And one of the changes that's happening, the updating of our software that we're getting here, that our mind and our beliefs, the use of our brain, or no understanding about our brain, understanding how the mind works, the brain as the organism, the mind as the consciousness stuff, the reflective memory, understanding that more, we're getting up-leveled and updated software to be able to tap into that higher part of the mind, or more expanded part of the mind. And actually this Friday we have Dr. Meiche is coming back, wonderful scientist, metaphysician, teacher, and we're going to be tapping in on this as well. Okay, we've got a call here. I want to see 608438. You're on Awakenings.
Hi. Hello?
Hello.
Am I allowed to call in for readings?
Yeah. You know what? I think we have that we were going to have that at the end of the month, but we do have them once a month.
Okay.
So, but check on the schedule, or you can email, Linda at selfandlight.com and see when it's on the schedule. But yeah, we do readings.
Okay.
Usually I do them once a month, or have someone on doing them.
Oh.
Okay. So who am I speaking with?
This is Stephen Metz.
This is who?
Stephen? From Madison.
Oh, hi, Stephen.
Hello.
Great. Yeah, we're not doing that today.
Okay.
In particular, I don't know why not, but we have a guest on today. So,
okay.
What were you inquiring about?
My career, kind of all in shambles.
Many of you've probably been hearing. Many are going through that right now. And are other people around you going through that?
Not really. It just seems like it's me. Not so much my family or friends or anything. But interesting phase in my life. Yeah,
the saying, out of chaos comes new order, and out of confusion comes creation. So very often when you said, your career, things are in a shambles. Very often when we're in a shambles, we're about building back up. And if I would tune in for you, one thing I would say for you is consistency and starting one thing and keeping on that and building from that.
Mhm.
And does that make sense to you?
Yes, a lot.
Yeah, I know. So taking that one thing. Now, one thing is, and this is great for you as well as other listeners, just because you focus on one thing doesn't mean you can't focus on other things at another time. So I call them, sometimes it helps for the ego to know I'm going to put something on the side burner. Something's on the side burner.
That's exactly what I'm doing right now. Like, music's on the side burner right now while I'm trying to build up my finances. So
there you go. So because once you get things going, once you have the foundation, then you can start bridging. But you don't want to forget about your dream or what you're impassioned about. But sometimes we take a transitional job, and it helps our ego personality if we tell ourselves our mind talk. If we say, you know what, this is transitional. This is to help me set up. And I like to call them no-brainer jobs. It's better to get a no-brainer job that you can enjoy, but you're not going to sink a lot of time and energy into it because it's bridging you. That way you can work on the other things on the side and then begin to bridge once you have a good foundation to what it is that you really want to do. So I would say for you, just stick with it. You're on the right track now. With the side burner, you're not forgetting about your music. You're not going to give it up. You can do it at, wee hours of the morning, early morning, midday, whenever you have time. But get that one transition job and make it agree.
Mhm. Hello?
Hello, I'm glad I'm reconnected because it was a live show, live program, and I don't know what happened with the connection. But to our last caller, Stefan, just keep with it. Consistency is key, and you want to give yourself at least a year because it may be shorter, maybe a little longer, but a year is very doable when you're going to stick with something, and then to start the bridging process. I am reconnected, everyone. So I'm trying to see which the Skype tunnel. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened, but the connection. We actually, at least we have better connection now than when I had we're in the rain and the windstorms. I don't know if some of you had been. Well, some of you were online when that happened. Friday. Major windstorm and rain, and kind of affected my internet and other things, and had to get a new phone and all of that. So let's see. Okay. So that was great that you called in. That was wonderful. Always good to have those calls. It was kind of impromptu. Anyway, I want to just get right to it about our guest. I want to, because I feel that it's so aligned to where we're all going, that how to move forward, even if you're feeling the fear, anxiety, especially in these times of the unknown. How do you get that support to move forward? So we have with us today Lee Harris, who's a recognized transformational teacher and intuitive leader. Whether working with individuals or facilitating worldwide seminars, Lee combines a developed psychic ability with his gifts as an emotional, intuitive, energy healer, spiritual speaker, and channeler to facilitate growth and healing on multiple levels. You can also find out more information about Lee at leeharrisenergy.com for more information if someone wants to put that also in the chat room. Hello, Lee. Welcome to the program.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I didn't know your number, so I was scrambling and then emailing Linda behind the scenes.
Oh, don't
what
worry.
number is he calling?
It's been one of those months, hasn't it? Everybody is.
Oh,
yeah.
yes, very much so. Yes, so welcome. And
thank you. Very nice to be here.
A wonderful focus that you have as well, I think, for these times. Sometimes I think we come into this world and we get our gifts and we use them, we actualize them all the while, and then it's years later that we go, oh, now I know why I'm doing what I do. Now I can see. You're nice and primed and placed in the time zone that is really needed. Which I think is right now.
Yeah, it's a really interesting time, isn't it? Because in the last 3 or 4 years, I've really observed at first hand with clients and with friends and with watching my own journey how we're all shifting so fast. And it does really feel at the moment that there are a series of people who are what I would call activating. So everything that they wanted to do and that they're here to do it, they really are in the phase and in the zone of doing it now. And then there are a lot of other people who are still just kind of ironing out the last kinks. And I know it's difficult because I think a lot of people have felt they've been in that space for a year or two, because the energy just keeps getting higher all the time. So it's like nothing is ever allowed to solidify before it's already adapting again, So I think it's been quite a crazy few years to be alive, really, but very interesting too.
I like that. Yeah, it has been a crazy, especially from 2006 on when we went in this quickening. It is, isn't it? It's just, and I don't know about you, but to me, this new year was the most new year that I think I've either ever felt or in a very long time. It really felt like the end of December. It was something was gone or over, and it just almost like you turn a corner and somehow it's bigger or lighter or bright, something. It was very different. Did you have that? No,
I absolutely agree with you. It was very, for me, it kind of started, I started to catch it around the end of December, this feeling that January was bringing, and then it's been very strong, hasn't it? It doesn't feel at all, no, you're right, because I've not felt a year like this for a few years now, where it feels like everything is very clear and very ready for people to create things without so much disruption or so much interference as there has been the last few years.
I do feel that, and it just really was very marked. I found in the past the years were kind of just rolling one into the same energy. You're just seamless.
Yeah.
And this one was really just like you wake up in the morning, like one day you wake up not feeling so great, you look out, okay, it's another day, and another day you spring out of bed. This was like the spring. It's like, oh, God.
Yeah. No.
The energy it's just different. It's just, and I've heard people all around the world that I've talked to have had the same thing. I actually haven't, listeners, participants in the chat and listening online, if you have a different experience, we're open to hearing this. But everyone I've talked to has said the same thing. So I find that kind of interesting.
Yeah, I was talking with a friend the other day about the whole notion of 2012, and it was only a couple of years ago really that I first channeled and first understood that we'd brought everything forward time-wise, and this idea that 2012 had already come forward a few years in terms of what the symbolism of that year meant energetically and as far as consciousness of humanity was concerned. And one of the things that has been coming through for me in January is the idea that we are currently in a 4-year cycle, and this is the beginning of the 4 years, and it's 2010, 2011, 2012, and 2013, and that there's a relationship between these 4 years that's not dissimilar to the relationship that was there between 2006 and 2009. So that says something to me about why it feels so different, because it does feel like there's something bigger and steadier going on this year rather than explosive and changeable, if you know what I mean. Whereas I feel like we've had a lot of explosive or changeable energy around in the last few years to help kind of catalyze this experience of people opening up, whether it's through, difficulty or pain or reduction of finance, or whether it's through a chosen awakening that's slightly more spiritually sought, where you actually go deeply into a meditation or an actual choice to heal yourself in a different way.
Mm-hmm. And are you finding it's because these energies are so much more available that if people are attuned to it, it's easier for them to connect in with?
Yeah, I think what seems to have happened is that over the last few years, there's definitely been this growth, as we all know, in the industry, the spiritual industry, and it's definitely showing that more and more people are looking into self-development, self-awareness, spirituality, whatever it means. But I think also, regardless of that side of things, you just have to look at the world and see how much more feeling has risen to the surface in the last few years. So I think what's going on is because at a mass level there is a lot more feeling involved around this speed that we're involved in. It does mean that it's been a little roller coastery for the last few years, because the more people were feeling with this new level of speed, there were a few car crashes along the way, if you know what I mean, for lots of us, I think, who were driving the car a little fast, or needed to be stopped or sent a different way. And it feels like that way of operating is kind of calming down a little bit, and definitely something is more open in people's belief systems and people's thoughts and people's feelings now, so a manifestation can kind of take place in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I think it's very hard to pin down, because you speak to different groups of people, and different people are having slightly different experiences of this group energy we're all in.
Yes. And that's a good point. I think that's why the resonance, the law of resonance, is so important right now, and to go more by that in your kind of feeling tone is because you're right, there are different groups having different experiences simultaneously. So some may be in the breaking down, some may be in the breaking down, dissolving phase, but saying, yippee, yippee, because I'm going to build up. Some may be breaking down and not too happy with it, and others are building, and it's really, you look out and you see the similar experiences, but experienced in different ways.
Yeah, definitely, and I think there do seem to be some very universal spiritual laws or ways of being that seem to work for most people, but I know that not everyone arrives at them in the same way or sees it in the same way. But one of the things that I've really noticed is a similar thing for all of us seems to be speed. Like, I know when I'm going too fast, things aren't going right. And it's always for me about speed. Am I going too fast, or am I going too slow? And it's something I never used to look at. But I think one of the things that is very important to us is just knowing the speed that we feel most comfortable at, because we're all designed a certain way. And some people are designed to create things very fast, and some people designed to create things in a slower way, and that's their process and their journey. So I think, first of all, knowing your own speed, but also not banging your heads against anything that isn't working. It's a difficult one, because we are a goal-orientated society, and lots of us learn how to be strong or how to achieve through pushing ourselves or being hard on ourselves, but there comes a certain point when actually letting go of being hard on yourself is all that really matters, because then the better you're being to yourself and the nicer you're being to yourself, ultimately the nicer and the better you're going to be for others. So yeah, I think that's the big thing that is a constant truth for any area or issue in our life. If there's something that's not going well and you really can't solve it, or it's really hurting, just step back from it. Don't fight it, just accept it, even if you don't like it, but agree to just take a few days off from it and see if something around it moves on its own if you step back. And often I think the fear of stepping back comes for us of the grief that we will feel if we do. So that's just something to bear in mind. If anyone listening is going through that, that's one of the things I always apply for myself. If I notice there's something I'm struggling with or having difficulty letting go of, I just kind of look at just stepping back and seeing what's there for me and what's the emotion that's actually in the conflict. in me at the time, you know.
Mm-hmm. I like what you say about this stepping back. I've been finding that as well, that if I'm overly poised and sometimes pushed for action, that, right? Let's be honest, it's not always poised. That, yeah, you're right, that there's a needing to step back and take a breath, take a minute, a few hours a day, or usually not much more than that, but not to jump into action, but have, the right action, let it, come from within more. And as I'm saying that, I think we used to do that innately. I think that was socialized out of us. Because like what you said, all that kind of people saying, well, you should push more or be more out there, more this, more that, So I think people try to, maybe I should just push. Even if it's not the right thing, just push,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think because we remember everything that worked from the past, and of course we do, because it worked, If we got a result from something 10 years ago, then if we find ourselves in the same situation 10 years later for the first time, we'll often go back to that old programming or that old patterning, which I think as well is why awakening can be so exhausting and seem so endless for people, because you start to open and then you go through all these old patterns and all these old things. And I've joked with a couple of friends that there should be like an awakening rehab program for people, where you actually, you kind of help. I could have done with it at times, just helping you kind of rehabilitate into just kind of everyday wants and needs again after going through a period where, you're just surrendering to letting everything go. Because there comes a point when you actually have to start choosing to, hold on to a few things just so that you have some definition. So it's a funny experience, awakening. I think I think there's definitely a lot of comedy that you could get out of it, because it's.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree, and I like what you said, because it is, you still have those layers, and I know, in a sense, many of us were programmed to think at some point you're done, right?
Yeah, and we're so not, are we?
No.
That was the big learning for me. It's like, no, it never ends.
Yeah, never ends.
It's constantly a teaching, a learning, an experience. Yeah.
I think for me, the difference now has been that in knowing that, and knowing, oh, this is something I'm going through, that, this is the human part, okay, human experience, okay, that's not, okay. But, not to diminish oneself because of what they're going through. It's just, our path is not linear, it's just not.
It's not at all, is it?
Mm-mm. Now, Lee, I'd love to know a little bit about, or as much as you feel comfortable sharing, about your own path and your first awakening. And I love that you know that there's many forms of awakening and that it's a succession, because I always ask, what's your first awakening? And, it's like, well, there more? Yeah, there's a lot more.
Yeah, there's a series, aren't there?
Yeah. But for you, tell us a little bit about your background and also your first awakening and what came out of that awakening.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, there are a few that seemed like the first awakenings each time, but I guess probably for me, the thing that comes to mind immediately is when I made contact with Zachary, who is one of the entities that I channel and have worked with for nearly 6 years now with people. I first had contact with him about 12 years ago, and that was very profound, realizing that I was having a conversation inside myself with something other than myself. And even though I had an enormous amount of skepticism at the time, I also knew that something quite profound was happening, even though I didn't really fully understand it. Yeah, and that had a very big impact on me, and of course, kind of changed the course of my life, and had a huge influence in my 20s. Around, I guess, the amount of personal healing work I underwent. As a child, I really wasn't very aware of psychic phenomenon or empathy or intuition, and yet now I can look back on my childhood and everything that happened and understand what happened to me through that filter. And because there was no understanding for me, of my sensitivity, I had a bit of a car crash childhood in my own view, which I know is my own, but I think in some ways there were some incredibly interesting things happened, and some very stifling things happened that I needed to go and learn from. And so when I hit my 20s, I realized, I don't know, I think I just realized there were things that I wanted to look at healing inside myself. And so as I set off down that path, I really became quite taken with the whole experience and the power of a group together doing healing work. And from there I basically started doing readings for people, private readings, and then ended up doing a series of seminars with Story Waters, who was my partner for 3.5 years. So we worked together doing many seminars, and so that was kind of my path into the work side of working within spirituality. And but I think the thing that really hits me the most about awakening and spirituality is how much it's an unlearning more than anything. You learn so much and then you just constantly unlearn it all, because any of it can become limiting at any time. So it's a funny process to me, how it becomes freer and freer the more you go through it.
I just said that this morning with someone. The onion, the proverbial onion, but we're getting more to who we really are.
Yeah.
And I think that can be very freeing to know that you're not fixing yourself. You're undoing, like you said. You're getting to more of who you really are and how you really are.
Yeah.
I love that you started, because in my training and my background, you train it. Those that are the true healers, light workers, always focused on their own healing and themselves. So for you just want to point that out to the listeners, for you to say you became very interested in your own healing and your path, and then out of that came the extension of helping other people. So I don't hear that a lot. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I listen for it though.
I'm very aware of the twofold experience, and it's interesting, now if I go and do seminars and work with people, I have very profound experiences as a result of doing it that change and shape me, and I'm always very clear about that, even if my experience is slightly different as the conduit or the facilitator for the group to maybe being in the group. The experience is always quite mirrored for me. So no, I really love that about it. It's a very shared experience with the person that you're working with or the people.
It makes it so fulfilling, doesn't it?
Yeah, it also makes it very alive in a way that I can't imagine. Yeah, I can't imagine with that life not being there what it would feel like to do it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always call that's the surreal part when you begin. I guess instead of surreal, it actually is the real part, because then you begin to live the live organism of life that we are, and everything is this interplay then.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Everything's speaking and talking to you. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's the thing I really love about healing work with people as well, because it's very, very unknown and very in the moment. So, if I work with a client to do a reading, I never know anything before we do it. And the same to some degree, if I go and do a weekend seminar, I'll have decided the topic and I'll have tuned in, and I'll know kind of loosely what we're going to look at in terms of the themes of the energy that weekend. But it's only really when the group are assembled and you're all there that the magic happens, really, because you see what the needs are and you see what the possibilities are within the group, and so you start working the group energy to see where you can go. So I love that it's all so unknown, and so very magical experiences.
Mm-hmm. And let me ask you, from working with people as you do, and then in your own personal unfolding, what do you feel helps people connect them more to the magic, this aspect that we're talking to? What do you find is the doorway to this, or at least getting in the foyer? What is the entry point into this?
It seems to vary. Like, for example, there might be some people who are fairly magical in themselves. They're great at manifesting. They have a very open spiritual energy, but they're a little closed in their heart, or they haven't yet expanded their love enough to trust that they deserve to kind of be creating this experience for themselves, or whatever it is that they're, whatever part of them feels like they have to limit the amount of energy that can come into their body. Those people, to me, generally just need reassurance and an understanding of how much love and how much power is inside them, because they're just not seeing it somewhere. But then you've also got other people who, because they just haven't spoken to someone about it, or they've never had anyone validate the experience they're having inside themselves, they don't believe they have any power, or they think it's got to be a lot bigger than it really is. Because I think, all of us who've had those first experiences where you realize you're very consciously creating something, it's quite profound, and it's one of those extraordinary proof moments where the skeptic in you actually gets given some evidence that helps build up the trust. And for me, it's always about trust. It's about how much you can let your fear not interfere with an outcome. So your fear might be there, but you don't let your fear drive you into creating an action that changes an outcome. Or because, for me, fear is very much the big one with all of this, whether it's the idea of being able to manifest, or trusting in universal energy, or trusting in the energy of telepathy that exists between us. It's usually just some part of us that's afraid to go there. And when that fear opens, then people can. That's been my experience so far.
And which brings us a bit to your book, Living Without Fear, yes?
Oh, it's not a book.
It's not a book. What is
No,
it?
it's not. It's an upcoming seminar, and it is also an audio recording in existence.
Oh, it is audio. But okay, is the audio recording available?
Yes, the audio recording is available. It was recorded last March in Budapest. It's a channel by Zachary, and it's all on the topic of living without fear.
Okay, and I'm putting in the chat leeharrisenergy.com, right? That's the website.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is the channeling there, the audio there as well?
Yes, it is. All of the audio's through there, and also there's a link to events. And each month I release an energy forecast at the beginning of each month on my blog. So if you sign up for the newsletter there, then you'll get the newsletters, and you'll get a newsletter each time there's a new energy forecast. Or I'll let you know about any events I'm doing in the US or anything like that.
Good. Okay. Do you know if you're coming here?
I'm at the moment. It's a little unsure when exactly, but we are talking about a couple of dates. At the moment, I'm going to be in Amsterdam, Berlin, and Tuscany between now and summer. So I haven't yet got anything put down for the US, but I'm hoping to have in the next few weeks.
Okay. Well, keep us posted. You definitely
I will.
Come back and share as well,
Right.
And okay, we have a caller. Let's see what. Hello, 928-443. You're on Awakenings. Do you have a question or comment?
Yes, I do.
Hi. Oh, great. And what's your name?
My name's Lynn Nelson.
Oh, hi, Lynn. Okay.
How are you guys?
Good, thank you. Hi, Lynn.
Hi. I just had kind of a question for either one of you, and feel free to answer it. And I've heard Diane talk about this before, and you were talking about it earlier, and it's, okay, I'll refer to it in my own words, okay?
Okay.
The shift that's occurring. And a lot of people around me, I'm in an area where there's a lot of people paying attention to this shift, the energy shift, and looking for their place in the new ways, okay? And I'm constantly feeling under pressure to find my place, my participation, constantly reading about, what I'm passionate about, and I'm actually feeling pressure to find it and not finding it, and kind of going, I'll try this, that's not it, I'll try this, that's not it, and I will do everything. I will sit and I will get very quiet. I will ask myself. I will do all the tests, or I'll write down, impulsively what it is that I feel I thrive in, and I'm still getting absolutely nothing. Now, I resonated a little bit with when you guys said earlier about kind of just letting it be. Well, I've tried that too, and it feels like nothing is coming, or maybe I'm blocking it, but I feel like absolutely no information is coming my way. Any suggestions, recommendations?
Can I just ask, how does your body feel about this? Because obviously you're not at rest. It's obviously not easy for you to just step back and leave it for a few months. There's something burning in you to solve it, isn't there? There's an energy there that wants to do something.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's the conflict. Because otherwise you just kind of sit back and leave it be. But I have a very strong, put it this way, if I had to give you some advice, I would actually say to you to stop looking for it for 1 month, but for 1 month to focus only on finding things that you really, really enjoy to do. So obviously there'll be a whole bunch of things already that you know, and you could do one of those things each day, but to fill every other day with the pursuit of finding a new joy. So if you haven't gone and done ballroom dancing, but you have an idea you might like it, put that on the list and go and try it, and spend the month getting in touch with your joy. Because the reason I say that is I can, just tuning in on you, I can feel this energy, and it's like a fire, and it's very strong, but it's not very big yet. It's kind of just like a flame that's lit in your body, and it's just sitting there, and it's very strong and it's burning, but it hasn't yet grown into your whole body. So what I'm getting quite strongly is that you're going to birth this passion from inside yourself. So if you just take a month to just focus on passion and joy and feeling really, really good and see what happens, you'll just shake things up a little bit so that your body activates a bit more, and either you'll bring something to you that will represent this thing that you're looking for, or along the way of doing these things, you'll discover that you actually are not only very good at ballroom dancing, but it's a passion that you didn't know you had, and it's right there, it's right under your nose, but it shouldn't be stressful finding it, would be my advice.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will do that. Thank you both very much.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. I think what you're bringing up, too, is so, I've got some feedback in the chat room about this, so important, because I think a lot of books out there, and maybe certain teachers, it's going to be this big epiphany or feel a certain way. And sometimes, like we said at the beginning of the program, it might be just doing something differently or a different approach. But the indicator is your joy. I call it a joy meter. It is that which brings you the most joy will lead you to your soul's purpose or your life's purpose. It almost reminds me, Lee, what you were saying earlier when you were mentioning how you got on your path. It was about you, and you were interested in this spiritual understanding or philosophy or pursuit, and then it just unfolded. It kind of naturally kind of snowballed more and more. Then you get, and I do find that you get more and more led the more you're finding that which brings you joy.
Yeah, and I think also it's funny, isn't it, when we refer to any spiritual teaching, there's such an amazing variety of choices out there that at any one time in your life could be perfect for you, but at lots of other times in your life won't be perfect for you, either because you're not ready for it, or you're beyond it, or it's not really the method that you need now. And I think that's the thing. I think, we try on all these methods and practices and healing modalities, and we find one that works for us, and we stay with it for a while or a long time or permanently. But yeah, you have to constantly keep reevaluating everything, I think, and seeing if things are still feeling good to you, and following what feels good all the time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Reminds me also as well, years ago, someone that I was working with was amazing, and some of the listeners may have heard me share this before, because it just so illustrates this. It's amazing, investor for large companies, and, making oodles of money, amazing lifestyle, great house in Taos, New Mexico, and but also was an avid astrologer. And at one point, thinking, again, misreading the signs, had an epiphany that because she loved astrology, she had to give up her huge, company as a portfolio investment. And I said, well, why? And she said, well, because I just love astrology. And she said, I even use it when I'm doing deals for the company. She goes, I'll look at the chart of a company and the chart of what they're going to invest in. And she went into this whole thing. And I said, how do you do it? She goes, oh, I'm really successful at it. And I said, so then why don't you bring that in? And she goes, well, I do. And I said, no, why don't you bring it in the boardroom? Reveal a little more of you. And she said, well, do you think I should? I said, why not? If you love this and you're already doing it anyway. I said, they probably don't care if you shake a rattle. If you're getting them returns, they don't care. So she did. She melded this other part of her and came forward more. And as far as I know to this day, she's still stayed with that company, or her own company, but felt very fulfilled because she was able to do her work, her outer work, in a way that really fulfilled her and supported her, and also let other people see this part of her. So,
great. No, I think that story is really telling as well, because I think a lot of the time, especially in this last 6 months, I think so many people got into a pattern of thinking that changes had to be dramatic or big, that really a lot of the time these days you just have to look at things that you're in from a slightly different perspective or angle and just adjust a few minor things, and then suddenly it fits. So I like that story in terms of that too. It's great.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Now so just adjusting a few adjustments. Now,
yeah, not always having to do it, because I think, especially if you've been what I call a super purger or a super awakener, somebody who's been going for it for a period of time very intensely and working on themselves, or having a big spiritual opening and being very much in service to that as a priority. Yeah, I think there comes a point when there's just some need for some balancing and some time for you to just reset everything again.
Yeah. And it's reminding me, too, what you're saying, Lee. Sometimes it's like you have all the pieces, but it's just how do we put the pieces together that makes us have more a sense of fulfillment.
Yeah. And I think there's such an enormous prize often built up around manifesting or bliss or, joy, be more in joy. And it's difficult because it creates, when the pendulum swings the other way and someone isn't interested, they think there's a problem, or and actually it's just part of the dance of the emotions of life. And I think this is a very, I think in some ways this is a very, very hard time to comment on in the moment with any sense of great weight, because I feel like we've got to go through the next 10 years to really see what's going to happen. Because I think we all are aware and have seen the evidence of this now more and more in the last few years, that these changes that have been spoken about at planetary and consciousness levels are taking place. And I think more than any other time in history, it feels like we have no blueprint for our future compared to how human generations have operated in the past. Because not only are the old frameworks and structures beginning to fall apart and change very fast, the world is very rapidly transforming right now, and we're just walking into this period that has been spoken of as this very new time. So I think also sometimes that's where the anxiety or the fear or the bewilderment can come from in those of us who are just, walking through it and creating the next 10 years of the planet and the next 20 years and so on, because I think at the moment it's such a blank canvas, and there's a lot to be built by everyone who's here in different ways. But I think also a lot of people just have a kind of, a stage fright about the coming decade in a certain way, or, a nervousness about it that I think is just natural given what we're looking at energetically. But I think the energy that's there and what's available for us at this time is feeling incredibly strong and incredibly positive too. So, yeah, it's an exciting time as well, I think.
Well, it's both this dismantling or dissolving and this simultaneous building up You know, and I love what you say too about the blueprint. We don't, because we are so present to forward focused, that the past, the rules of the past, in some ways are not applying, and some are applying, but are changing. So it really is, in a sense, you know, a little bit of applied action. I'd say calculated risk. I don't think people have to get reckless, but I think sometimes taking the chances to listen to those inner stirrings of where are you being guided, even if something doesn't feel probable. I mean, I'm going to get an example. I know this kind of silly, but what was that, the woman, the Susan Boyle, that, you know, had all the on the right.
Yeah.
So the likelihood of something like that happening, and then recently in the American version, there was a man, I don't know, 62 or no older, 65, that sang some song, and that's really taken off. I think these examples are, isn't that amazing?
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think it's really, really healthy for the world. Really good.
I think, isn't it? I think it's kind of saying, you know what, just kind of let go of those constrictions, those boxes. You know, it can happen. You know, you don't. It doesn't have what you were saying earlier about the past. The prescriptions of the past are less and less applying to where we are now.
Well, even if in terms of predictions and prophecies for the future, we're at a very what I would call quiet time. You know, if you think that, you know, for hundreds of years there have been all of these prophecies about 2012, and people have been following them and paying attention to them, and, you know, we're now approaching a time where things quieten down in that sense. So there is a lot of room for creation.
Oh, I love that. Room for creation. There's a lot of room for
It's funny I say that, because as I say that, I think one of the things that has come through a lot for me in the last week or two, I had a bit of a revelation here. 3 weeks ago, I've never painted before, but I've had an instinct to paint, and I've had a canvas for about 3 or 4 years, canvas and paints that I've been, you know, carrying with me all this time, and I've never done it, and I finally did, and I'm currently on canvas number 9. About 3 weeks later, I'm really really loving it, and it's funny because, you know, for me it was a revelation, because I just didn't think I could draw, so I really didn't think it would be any good, but I really got quite taken with the process. And as I was painting and just having a chat with Zach in my head, you know, he was just talking about this energy. He was saying, yeah, this is the energy of the time. Things will birth very, very quickly for people as they kind of activate themselves around certain things. So it's a time for people to find new things inside themselves and have them kind of pop open as well, I think. So, yeah.
And maybe it's that just you listen, and that stepping forward, maybe, or just doing it, just seeing where it leads a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, you know, sometimes I think it can get very liberating when you realize that fear will often be a part of the journey of change, you know, when you just accept it and go, okay. You know, I think, you know, most of the powerful experiences I've had in my life have involved me walking towards something that I'm terrified of.
Yeah.
So, but I keep walking all the same. You know, I let the fear come with me. So I think
me as well, right? Any next level, any new level.
I think it's
your tummy starts going, right?
It's for everyone. It's this funny thing, you know, fear isn't talked about that much in society, but it's so present everywhere all the time. I think if it was talked about a bit more, it would actually be a healthier release of those kind of underlying energies that you feel in and around people, you know, even if it's just we're out in the subway and that kind of awkward non-intimacy that exists between strangers in a subway, you know, there's this fear underlying. So, yeah, I often think that's the control valve that we have around how much we'll open our hearts and how much we'll love. And I think, you know, as a society, we're just trying to turn that volume control up all the time as much as we can.
Well, I also think you bring up a good point, Lee, because I think if we admit it to each other, it's like, you know, healers or people, you know, in the holistic health field, if you have a cold, they want to, you know, they don't want to admit it, or I'm just detoxing, nothing's wrong, I'm healthy, you know, they go, it's okay to have a cold, okay, it's all right, everybody gets one, you know, it's like, calm down, you know. But I think it's kind of this thing people don't want to admit to, and yet when you talk to people, anybody, I don't care what level they are at, like you said, everyone has fear. Some people, some of the greatest musicians or actors get stage fright or don't know, can I do another album like this, or another CD, I don't know, or I go on stage and I'm always frightened, but then it goes away. And I think if we owned up to it, it would perhaps even in the collective unconscious, in the field, would, I'm just thinking this while I'm talking to you, it probably would lessen.
No, it really would. I think the more that we're able to talk about our fallibility and our vulnerability to each other without being afraid that we will be judged or looked down upon by the rest of the group or whoever you're speaking, without any fear that you revealing that part of your vulnerability will cause you any harm or distress at the hands of the others, then I think it would be a truly amazing world. And I think that it is already, from my childhood. I'm 33 now. I've seen a huge change from what was out there in culture, both in terms of books and magazines and films, and the way that we as a culture are represented now is very different to 30 years ago as people emotionally, and I think that's really healthy. I think there is more of a flow of communication about our feelings going on. And one of the things that I found so humbling about starting to do the personal readings I did with people was, the amount of fear that I would get to come into contact with other people. It really opened my eyes to how some of the most extraordinary people that I've worked with, what they were dealing with. And I just saw how, everyone is dealing with something, or, something's going on for them that you often can't see or don't choose to see or don't consciously see. But people, we're all so similar, and that was actually very liberating for me to see that too,
Yeah, we are. We're all trying the best we can. Some a little better. But
yeah.
Exactly. Got another call here, and it's a Skype call, so I'm hoping, or a personal call. Just I'm hoping you know who you are, because it's a Skype call or a personal call. Caller number 6. Welcome to the program. You're on the Awakenings. Okay. Hello?
Hello?
I can hear you. Okay. So we have a caller, but you either have a private number or Skype number that's not showing up. So I'll give you another chance. You're on Awakenings. Okay. So if the Skype caller or the other caller, if you do want to me to pick up again, you have the number 1 pressed, indicating that you have a question or a comment. You can also put it in the chat room as well. Okay, and we did have someone in the chat also. In Awakening, is it normal to want to be more in solitude sometimes?
Yeah, no, that's very, very common. Can happen for various reasons. Number 1, during Awakening, during Awakening, I would, maybe it's best to say once Awakening starts, because it can last many years, but I think there's a moment when it starts happening for you. Your energy is rewiring very, very fast all of the time. So it can be a lot more tiring on you than you realize, and usually what happens is people can't keep up with their normal schedule, and they can't keep up with their normal social schedule, and they start to fall back on it, and then eventually they learn that they need to cut back, and they need to just take more time to themselves. There are a few different reasons. One of the things that happens whenever we're interacting with either one individual or a whole group is we in some way merge with their energy, whether we do it very deeply or even just at a small level. You merge with whoever you're around. During Awakening, you're on your own a lot because you need space for your energy to open out and to be able to be rewired, as it were. And also to kind of come to know yourself. There's a lot of information that gets given to you, and it's funny. I mean, you could be receiving this information while you're sitting in bed watching your favorite DVD. You don't have to have your mind trained on it. It's just something that's happening to you. So a lot of people go through what I call a chrysalis period, or a hibernation once they're awakening. And, you can go through this at different times, and it's very healthy. It's like a reset, a rebalance.
Mm-hmm. And again, as we were talking about the fear, I think the solitude or being on your own, alone, not necessarily lonely, you might feel that, but you don't have to, again, is something that we don't really talk about in our culture, that it's okay to, not want to go out or be around someone, or if you're the family, saying, I need a little extra time on my own or alone.
Yeah, it's difficult because saying that to people can bring things up for you. There are some people who won't like it, or certain family members who might want to not go to a certain family event, but they always force themselves to do it. So the day that you turn around and say that you're not going, they have an issue with you based on the fact that they've never given themselves permission, So there are all sorts of things that can, come up. But that's very healthy too, because that really reveals where there are a few ties within relationships that you might want to just look at. You can just untie a few of those and just move through things. But yeah.
And in one way, it's as we're becoming more and more authentic, each individual, it is allowing others to do that as well. Like this idea that you give with the family situation, that, if we hold to that inner truth, then it also down the road gives them permission through example, not even have to say anything to them, but gives them permission, right?
Definitely. You know what it's like when think of the time that you've been round to a gathering at someone's house, whether it's a family or a group of people, and you know them and you know these people fairly well, you've been around them a few times, and you walk in there and you can just cut the air with a knife, but nobody is saying anything of any consequence.
Yeah.
So they're all doing the small talk thing, but you can feel underneath these things bubbling away in these people, and actually that's very, very cancerous for the soul and for community. And yet it's interesting that certain social rules, if they're followed, would lead certain people to get stuck in this. The idea that you have to go and attend and be with these people, or, whatever it is that's got those people together, whatever rule it is they're following, obviously isn't working for them. And it will kind of detonate for them in some way unless you, choose to look at it. I think it's a very new time for lots of people when they're awakening too. They're feeling a lot more. So it can make being around people who are angry and aren't talking about their anger, or are depressed and aren't talking about the depression, it can make it a lot harder to be around them because you're more sensitive to the energies. And that can be awkward too, because it can mean that people who previously weren't really a problem, you suddenly become ultra sensitive to. And you don't always explain why, It's it keeps you on
that
your
is
toes,
a real
yeah.
That is a real a real one, to have that compassion but have that inner balance, so that you're right, because certain things you're less able to you can tolerate for a short period of time, but long-term engagement, it becomes very difficult, almost like fingernail on the chalkboard. It just becomes, or just so not your reality to be around.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your thought on that? What's your Lee? What's your remedy for that? That's the $64 million question.
Well,
oh boy.
I guess I guess it's different for everyone, but in my personal experience, my personal life, I went from being very, very social, very, very involved in and amongst people pretty much all the time, for lots of years. And then when I got really deeply into my awakening, which I think started probably about 3 years ago, the next level, I became quite stay at home and stay on my own. And it was difficult, it was awkward, because it changed the dynamic of certain relationships. And I personally went through a lot of grief. I went through a lot of grief of letting go of the intimacy and the closeness I'd built up with certain people that I needed to just step back from in order to be able to serve my work, my path, and the process that all of it was putting me under at the time. So, but then I kind of went through that period, came back, and reconnected with the people that I was still supposed to reconnect with. So To be honest, I don't think it's ever fun to have to shift dynamics with people you love because there's something that's not working, even if it's someone that you know that you love, but you're not going to see them much again. I think it's never easy. It's never fun whenever there's that kind of difficulty involved with changing your way of being around other people. But it's so necessary for them as much as for you. It's actually unavoidable. It's one of those things that you can ignore it for a while, but it will make you deal with it at a certain point. You will at a certain point have to deal with changing a few of those dynamics in your life the more you wake up, because you just can't take the energy of the conflict or the difficulty that's existing anymore.
It's interesting. Yeah. And it seems no one on the path, at least before us and current to us, we'll see with the future, but escapes this. It seems to be an inevitable part of the path.
Yeah.
That ultimately, right, that there's this, you went through it, I went through it, you hear it with the people you work with, I do, what happened? Now they don't like me, or, they don't love me, or, my family, or I can't be around them because I've tried to help, it's inevitably there is this time on the path where it seems like you're losing everything or everyone. I do like what you said. The ones that you're supposed to connect with, and in the way it does come back. But
yes.
What do you make of that? There is always that part. There's always that little stop on the road.
Yeah, I guess I don't know what my conclusion on it would be 10 years down the line. But at the moment, I think one of the things that I've noticed in the last few years is that the people that you've had conflicts with in the last few years are what I would call heavy hitters in your world. People who have really strong connections with you at a soul level, even if they're someone who just came in for a year, and you only knew them for a year and then they were gone. And I think it's very painful for us to deal with separation. Very, very painful for us as human beings to deal with separation. It's the first pain that a baby goes through when it realizes it's separate from the mother. And one of the things that I think I realized within about the last year really was just the fundamental truth, and you mentioned it, which is we are actually very alone. So even if we're happily partnered, even if we're living in a community of 12 people, we are always actually alone. Even from our children, even from our parents. And so there are these connections that we have that will be a part of the tapestry of our feeling and our senses and our thoughts. But actually, ultimately, as this energy being and body, you're on the earth rolling the dice every day, if you like. You know what I mean? There's a certain level of every day you get to recreate the game for yourself. But it is a game that you play as a solo player. And I think that's actually what makes our levels of appreciation for each other so high when we reach them, because we realize how wonderful it is to partner with each other and to be in community with each other. And so I think that was a big release for me when I really realized that, and that was hard. I didn't enjoy realizing that for a while, but when I did, and when I got there, and when I understood what it meant, and when I understood that it actually connects me even more to everybody else, it permanently changed the idea of loneliness for me in a positive way, and any challenges it left me with, I kind of just got on with dealing with,
Yeah, when you were saying that, I was thinking, you do come in with this expression, something that we're to be expressing, experiencing, and like you said, it is very solo, yet there are people that we connect with to share this with.
Yeah.
And I think so much of the enforced sometimes connection, even in the mainstream populace or mainstream media, is about not feeling that space or that separation on this level, this dimension, this, that the space, I think, is really for us to grow into instead of cramming things in there, perhaps.
Yeah. No, and just, again, it's that stepping back and seeing who you really are when you strip away who you've become in response to the stimulus of both society and your personal life circumstances. That's a very big journey to take, I think, and I think we do that. I think we stop at certain times in our life and just reflect on where we've been, and I think it's very powerful when you do that to see where you've come from, but also to see how varied your journey has been. I think one of the things we can forget when we get into our routines or our patterns, which can be brilliant and really serve us, but there's a point that you can get locked into them, and then when some change comes along that changes the pattern or the routine very suddenly, it can be traumatic because you weren't open to it, you weren't looking out for it, you were just thinking that the routine and the pattern was the reality now, and you were quite comfortable in that. So I think with the events of the last few years and probably the next few years, we're all getting a bit better at appreciating what we have while we have it and just going with the moment and not worrying so much about the future and trying to just live for the day and feel what we have in the now.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting too because the future does have a way of taking care of itself if you're focused in the present and doing what you need and want to do in the present. There is this extension. I think a lot of what's happened, in the systems, whether governmental or economic, have shown that you may do everything that was in the rule book that was given you, but there are no guarantees. So it brings us back to what do you really want to do?
Yeah.
What do you really to do?
I think a lot of people have that question on their mind at the moment, which I think is also why it seems like about once a month a whole new raft of people go for something new in their life, and of that raft of people who go for it, some actually start to make something concrete, and others it doesn't quite stick or it doesn't quite work, and so the next month they again attempt something. And it feels like some people are managing to create something different for themselves, something they really want to do, and a lot of other people are, as a group, I think, almost fertilizing the future ground for themselves as a collective, even if they're not yet going to move into those new spaces.
Almost as if they're maybe moving into the space maybe more mentally. Maybe there's not the action yet, but
I think
is that what you're saying? Or
I think more to the point that we're a little unaware of the collective energy going on. We can all be focused on our individual activation, if you like, or the part of you that goes, this is what I want to do at this moment, and this is what I feel to do with my energy right now. I think that activation energy is moving through very strongly for people now, and I think what's happening is some people are grabbing it and harnessing it and going for it, and others are not because of themselves, but because there are other people who their path is reliant on who aren't quite making it. So, for example, let's say you yourself wanted to be a masser and set up a website, and you've never done this before. Your website person isn't ready yet, and the clinic where you're going to be isn't quite got the space. Oh, and that's really convenient universally because you've just got that little bit of self-doubt left. So you'll just wait one more month while the room at the clinic becomes available, while the person who's going to design your website has a space come up, and while you just cry a little bit around the part of you that doesn't think that you're able to create this, or you think there's something wrong with you, and then you get over it, you let it go, and then it all opens, Sometimes it works in funny ways like that.
You bring up a really, really pertinent point here, that sometimes it's almost like even with technology, like something hasn't caught up yet, that invention or innovation. Right, I agree with you, the collective isn't there yet. There isn't the space is there on the ethers, but it isn't here, on the material plane or earth plane. And so there is this waiting. Like you said, maybe the designer isn't there yet, or the room hasn't opened, or even you're going to do this, or you're meant to do something, but let's say the person at the clinic hasn't even yet had the idea that they want to do this expansion for the type of work that you do. I so agree with you. There's so many people and for a few years have been placed in positions where they're waiting in awareness on the collective, that their peace they may have a little bit sooner than the place is open there.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes total sense. That's it seems to vary from person to person, but I think the thing that I constantly notice in this process that we're describing is how things improve for people all the time through this process. Because, for example, if in 2007 someone said, I want to build a pyramid that's 6 feet tall and I want it to be made of crystal, by 2010 the design has grown to a 60-foot tall pyramid made of crystal that he's importing from Peru. So I've often seen people's visions and dreams that haven't manifested yet start growing or improving, and then they happen. So sometimes, to be honest, I think it can be very, very, very unhealthy to believe that because you're not manifesting something, you're just blocked or you've just got problems. I really don't think it works that way. If there is a block, then the block is what you're supposed to manifest, because that's, we're designed to
timing, right?
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I feel that there's been this, thought out there that if you don't have this and this or aren't doing this and this, like there's something wrong with you. There might be, for some, there might be a block, but for others there may not be. It might be, just as you're saying, Lee, a timing issue.
There's a very classic joke that I'm sure you've heard. God, I'm terrible at remembering jokes, so I don't even know why this has popped in my head.
I'm even worse, so I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
But it just came into my head when you said this, and it goes something like this. It's the person who is basically in deep distress. They're on the top of a burning building, and they go, God will save me, I'll be okay. And a helicopter comes and lands on the building and says, get in, and they go, no, God will save me, I'll be okay. And then someone has managed to throw a plank from one building to their building, and they say, quick, walk across the plank, you'll be safe. No, God will save me, I'll be okay. So anyway, eventually the man dies and goes to heaven and says, what happened? You said you'd save me. And he went, I sent a helicopter, I sent people with a plank. And I think we're so like that as human beings. We are so convinced we know what we're doing and where we're going. And I'm someone who uses psychic vision a lot in my life, both for other people but also within myself. Yeah, I have a huge blind spot for myself, and unnecessarily so, And I think that's the point. We're supposed to go through. There are certain things we can see and sense for ourselves, and certain things we can draw to ourselves. But all we ever have to do is follow the thread. We're not here to judge it. We're not here to assess it. We're here to experience it. And maybe when we're 85 and sitting on a veranda somewhere, we'll sit and reflect over the years and go, okay, that meant that and that. But following the thread of feeling is the riddle. I think what happens so much is, because of the traditional way of us being raised, I guess, as kids, as human beings, certainly for me, and I think this is common the world over, there's this idea of, are you doing it right? Is what you're doing good? Is it benefiting other people? There are all of these pressures, all of these tick boxes that, we used to live under. And there was lots of fear or anxiety around certain ones of those. So when you've cleared all of those and you've let go of those tick boxes, you can start living just a bit more in a certain flow, and just trusting that whatever you're experiencing is what you're meant to experience that day. Because I think, I see a lot of people use certain spiritual teachings to be hard on themselves, and I always think that's such a shame when I see that, because somewhere something's got missed in the message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's and maybe this message will get out more. That you're saying it now, which is great, and hopefully in some of your other work as well, and many more also begin to say this more publicly. That the wisdom, I think, is knowing, is it a block, is it a timing? Am I using this to be, like you say, be hard on myself? Because there is something about this unfolding that's happening, that a lot of it we just don't know rationally. We have to experience it. It almost feels like sometimes, Lee, that in a way, in a sense, sometimes people wanting to skip the experience.
Yeah. No, we are a very end-game society, aren't we, if you think about it?
Well put.
It's very much
Yeah.
about the end result. It's about the end product. It's about, all of this focus. If you think of, it's funny, I was just thinking today about Meryl Streep. She's one of my favorite actresses, and she made a comment in an interview that I read yesterday where she was talking about her latest movie, and they were asking her about her movies, and she was saying she doesn't remember the movie very well because she only ever sees it once, if at all. She doesn't remember what the end result is, but she remembers it through the experience she had. She remembers the location, the people, the crew, and I thought, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because there is often a lot of focus on certain end products, whether they're the photographs that we have of the holiday that we went on, or whether they're a movie that's our favorite movie. And actually, our experiences are happening all of the time, and these are just documents of experiences, and that's a shift in perception which I think can take work, because I know as a kid I definitely put a lot of value on all of these end products, and saw them as the destination in a way, and then realized that it was the journey of creating something like that people enjoy the most.
And do you feel we're moving away from that? That end result?
We are. I think it's a bit chaotic at the moment. I think that's why I think we're moving away from a lot of competitive and conflict energies. But at the moment, because we're trying to move away from competitive and conflict energies, I think it can look a bit messy at times. In the world, and I think we're still dealing with the impact of the internet being such a dominant force, which is so different to what we, the channels of information that we had before, and the limits of information and communication that we had before. So we're still in the infancy of seeing what the impact of that is on our world, and I think there's a lot at the moment that's flying up in the air that's going to be resolved over the coming few years, but at the moment there's a lot up in the wash, as they say.
Well put. It's kind of in that midpoint in a way by what you're saying.
It does feel we're very much there, and I think as well, more than ever now, I understand that I do think this is the time for lots of us people to basically step forward with what it is we're doing, whether that's just a way of being or a way of communicating, or whether that's a doing, a change of job or a change of and I don't say that with any sense of instruction. That's more a prediction of what I see and what I'm seeing happening in the coming years. Lots of people taking their place in new ways in the world, and through those places helping form part of the new structure. Yeah.
That building. Okay, we've got another caller. Let's see. Hello, 727-645. You're on Awakenings.
Hi, nice to speak with you. This is C-Girl,
Hi.
Lori. Hi.
Hi, Lori. Welcome to the program.
I'm sorry, I have been away for so long. I've been lost in research and in the computer. And I saw your reminder come through today, and I'm like, oh, it's on. Let me get in there. Finally.
Oh, well, welcome. It's great to hear your voice.
You. Oh, I know we had a terrible cold spell a couple weeks ago, and unfortunately a lot of our ocean life died. We lost over 100 manatees and sea turtles, and thousands of fish are washed up on the beach because the water has never gotten so cold before.
I didn't know that was some of the impact.
Yes, because it dropped down into the 20s, and our water temperature actually got the coldest it ever was. And just yesterday morning, they said we lost over 100 manatees, and the beaches are covered with dead fish, and that's just so heartbreaking is the only word I have for it. Yeah. Well, the reason I was calling, the reason I was calling, your guest mentioned Mr. Harris.
Hello.
Hi. Should I call you Mr. Harris or Lee?
No, you can call me Lee.
Lee, okay. You mentioned before that you were psychic on people. I don't know if you pick up on people's energies through the phone or how you do it. But my question, and the reason I'm calling, is within the last about 5 to 6 weeks, I've had an urge to write a story. It came to me. I forget how it came to me, if it was a dream or an experience. It's going to be fiction, and I've been doing the backstory and the research. And in it, I want to include real-life facts that are about the things we speak of here on this program. Incorporate them into my story somehow so that the message can be given to people in a way that, though it's published as fiction, it will give them something to think about as the way the Earth is now preparing to step into a new stage of enlightenment. Do you feel that this is something that I'm capable of doing?
Oh yeah, no, it's something you're capable of doing. What I get quite strongly is at the moment you're in a midway point. You're currently halfway between joining the book with your, to put it in simple terms, your head and your body. So your head and your torso. So the feelings that you have in your torso and in your heart, you're very compassionate, very, very strong sense of compassion and wanting to give as much love as you can to others and help others to activate love in themselves.
I'm a hospice volunteer, so I feel,
okay.
Yes, that's perfect, yes.
And you also have what I would call an admiration of mind. You yourself are intelligent, but you also have a real admiration of developed minds and intelligence. So what you're trying to do is bring these two together in you. And it hasn't always been easy. There have been moments where you've had a few little battles with yourself because you're having to break through something to do this. Right. But that's part of the process. That's part of the, it's almost like taking yourself to writer's boot camp to get yourself in shape for what you're about to birth through. But
right.
I have a very strong feeling about April and your experience in April around what you're doing.
That's good.
But it's also interesting that you said you've been doing this in the last 5-6 weeks, and I was talking about my experience with the painting and hearing this of a few other people.
I heard that, yes.
Yeah, there's this activation energy that seems to be hitting a few people.
Something I have to do, whether or not it goes anywhere. I still have to get these words out.
No, absolutely. And, the other thing to just be aware of is that, you're someone who is quite expanded in your understanding of channeling and consciousness, but you're also channeling something new here. There's a new energy that you're bringing through you in the creation of this. So it will be a very rich experience, but just remember to not get caught in any fights with yourself when you're writing the book. And if you do get caught in a fight with yourself or a judgment moment or a conflict with yourself, just stop. Just step back.
Right.
You won't ever resolve anything from a fight. A fight is just a moment of tension where you've got close to a place in yourself that's being stretched a little bit faster than is comfortable. So you can just step back and leave it for a day or two and then come back. And it will just settle itself. And I think when you're any creator of any kind, it's that very delicate dance of allowing as much to come through you as possible and allowing the censor or the editor in you to not interfere or to panic or to...
Yes, that's what's happening.
It's a very delicate experience, and it's one
that... So I start to doubt that this makes any sense and doubt my ability.
You'll go through that, and that's actually valid, because as you go through it, you let go of it, you undo it. You just kind of have those thoughts and just let them go. That's why it's good to be conscious when you find yourself struggling and just step back.
I was also thinking...
April will be a very strong time.
Okay, so I was also thinking, would perhaps a formal college writing class be beneficial?
Yes and no. Any kind of bits of training are going to be beneficial to you, but nothing too long-term. So, for example, if you went to a one-off class, that would be great.
Yes. Okay.
If you commit yourself to a 12-week course, you might find that 3 of the weeks are great and 9 of them aren't really for you.
A seminar would probably be better.
Yeah, something that's short-term, Okay. Yeah.
Well,
get those new forms out there. Get your forms out there.
Thanks
for calling in.
For your advice. It's good to hear. Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, Lee, this has been, it just flew. This has been wonderful.
It's gone so quickly. Yeah. No, it's been really wonderful to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's great. And you have open invitations, so just let us know when you want to come back and share. And our guest has been Lee Harris. You can connect with him at leeharrisenergy.com. A lot of wonderful resources on his website. And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to Awakenings and sharing your insight and your energy. Thanks, Lee.
Thanks, Michelle.
And until next time, just continue to share your light, shine your insight, keep awake. Shine your light and share. Awakenings airs every Wednesday and Friday, 12 p.m. Pacific time. Until next time,